When Adam sent over the fabled GTX 2080, that's right, I said GTX 2080, it got my gears turning. How far have we come with the feature sets of the RTX lineup promised at launch? What has been the impact on the PC gaming scene over the past 5 years, and what can still be improved on? So hang out for a bit as I look back at the launch of RTX and compare where we are at today to then. Let's rewind things to just before Gamescom 2018 when we were at the height of the GTX 10 series and raster was king. No one was even worried about advanced features like real-time ray tracing or deep learning upscaling. It almost reminds me of the end of the single-core CPU era where we were solely focused on pushing frequency above all else. And if you remember those days, then you'll probably remember what it was like when the RTX 20 series was announced and reviews went live. Sure, the RTX 2080 Ti was impressive, but it had to be for the eye-watering price tag. The RTX 2080 regular was quite the mixed bag and had similar performance in games at the time to the outgoing GTX 1080 Ti. That was a hard pill to swallow considering the RTX 2080 cost more than the GTX 1080 Ti. But like multi-core CPUs of long ago, it promised future-looking features that could be the differentiator over time. Speaking of future-looking features, let's talk about the impact RTX cards had on gaming, specifically real-time ray tracing. Now I know, ray tracing was a thing before RTX, but it was not something that was considered viable for real-time gaming applications. At launch, NVIDIA showed off some tech demos of Battlefield 5 using RT reflections and Shadow of the Tomb Raider using RT shadows. But the first thing people noticed in the live demos were the low frame rates. Now, I'm not trying to give it a pass, but real-time ray tracing of any kind is a seriously tough thing to pull off. So, I was intrigued. But when you launch a whole new line of products that are built around this technology, then you're kind of to a bad start. The worst part was the fact that when the cards launched, there were no games that actively supported the touted RTX features. RTX was basically all dressed up and had nowhere to go, which made the sticker shock even tougher. Now, it wasn't too long before updates started rolling out slowly so that people could get their taste of RT reflections, shadows, and ambient occlusions. Metro Exodus was one of the first games to have a version that required an RT-capable graphics card to even play. Now, while you could still play the original version without the need for RT, the enhanced version of the game required it because all of the baked lighting had been removed to make way for RT to do its thing. Later on, we saw releases like Quake 2 RTX and Minecraft RTX that went a step further with full path tracing for lighting. Now, many mocked those games because Quake 2 was older than a lot of gamers today and Minecraft was, well, Minecraft. But in 2023, CD Projekt Red launched an update to Cyberpunk 2077 that allowed for path tracing in a very modern game. And with the recent launch of Alan Wake 2, developer Remedy brought the same features to that game and then some. So here we are now, and while most real-time ray tracing is still tough as nails to run on lower-end hardware, we are seeing the shift happen. 5 years may seem like a long time to many, but in the grand scheme of video games, it's not. However way we slice it, the ray tracing still does come with a major caveat. Performance. Yep, running ray tracing can inflict a massive performance hit, even when using top-of-the-line GPUs out today. There is no dancing around the fact that these real-time ray tracing functions of any kind negatively hit the frame rate. But NVIDIA had an answer ready to combat that. Deep Learning Supersampling, or DLSS for short. The idea was simple. Take a lower resolution rendered image and, through the use of machine learning and motion vectors, rescale it in real time to hopefully look as close to the native resolution as possible. While the idea was simple, the execution, however, was not. Now, I expected to be blown away when DLSS was rolled out, but instead I joined the large community of people wondering WTF is going on here. DLSS did boost frame rates, but it also looked rather blurry. In fact, lowering the resolution yourself and adding sharpening resulted in a better image. Eventually, NVIDIA rolled out DLSS 2.0, which we looked at heavily when it was released, and this iteration is where everything changed. The community went from rolling its collective eyes at DLSS to now accepting its benefits. Gone was the soft, smeary look of the original launch, and now we got a much sharper final image. Adoption expanded, and those without RTX cards began demanding AMD deliver a similar feature, which came later. And it was wild how quickly we went from hearing fake resolution to, hey, where's my upscaling? Fast forward to today, and we have the likes of DLSS 3, FSR3, and XeSS, and we're even getting newer features like frame generation and ray reconstruction. So it's been 5 years since RTX launched, and it's undeniable to see the impact that it's had on the gaming scene as a whole. The introduction of real-time ray tracing and upscaling in games has gone from something that people look sideways at to now being almost a requirement. Not only has it changed game development, it's even changed the expectations of gamers when it comes to buying hardware. Now, every GPU maker is on board and supports DXR or DirectX ray tracing. However, are those original 20 series cards able to keep pumping out all of the RT goodness from games like Alan Wake 2? Well, they struggle now for sure, but that's where the major push comes in with upscalers. DLSS has come a long way into help stretching the life of those early RTX cards out because it can be used even without ray tracing to kick up performance. Now every vendor has a version of upscaling, and ones are even cross-vendor supported. There's still a segment of PC gaming community that doesn't care for ray tracing or upscaling at all and simply isn't willing to give up the performance for the visuals. Luckily, those people can turn all that off and play like they always have. But a big concern of late has been the worry that developers will lean heavily on upscalers to make up for what gamers refer to as poor optimization. And this is a valid concern, after all, because if one can simply flip a switch and get better performance, then why spend time polishing? Let's hope developers don't go too far down that rabbit hole. And that leads us to, where do we go from here? And to that I can only speculate, since I don't have a crystal ball or mystic powers, no matter what you may think. What I expect to see is even more games with path tracing options like Cyberpunk 2077 and Alan Wake 2 have proven viable in AAA development. And I expect to see DLSS only get better, but I can wholeheartedly join in the crowd that is concerned that some developers will use DLSS as a crutch rather than a tool for more performance. Only time will tell, and I'd love to hear your take on the RTX journey we've gone through so far. And as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss even more PC hardware and gaming goodness.